Going live. All right, so this is a video response to Cory. Thank you for creating that, for reminding me to get back into the game. I've been trying to think of ways to better communicate with people, with the community, trying to get some ideas flowing, relationships. And one of the main problems I always come up with is expression, of course. It sucks to sit down to write down your thoughts. Sometimes that's a more concise way of doing it. Sometimes you just need to rack your brain and do it like that. But in the case of building, maintaining relationships, of communicating with one another, of sharing ideas, it's really more about that, like you were saying, what's the fresh new content? What's on your mind? You kind of have to bounce things back and forth on the fly in this type of a, well, this would be one way of doing it. So video and video response kind of thing. We could do live video chat and record that, like a video conference meetings, whatever you call it. So I like this idea. I like that it's faster. We can communicate. We can talk. There's all kinds of side information, side channels that can be used or utilized, such as facial expressions or tone of voice, all that kind of stuff. Stuff that gives hints to that which cannot be conveyed necessarily straight through text. So I've been thinking a lot how to help the network, my network, people around me converge better to get into more tight and committed, regular, cyclical routine of communication, and this is how a bunch of people can kind of converge together. We could be using this type of technology. This may be one such way. So what I can do is, I did this with my last. I did like it took me 3 weeks, I think, and I was just, I guess you could call it channeling information from the Holy Spirit or whatever. 33 hours. I ended up recording like 2 hours a day or something straight. Just kept going. The point is, though, I was able to transcribe it and then do word clouds for each clip, like I did a number of different clips. So it's kind of like I have a body of communication of my most recent stuff that I can point to, and that I can personally look through my list and see where are the topics, and then go into that session that I did, and pull out pieces, and then use that to communicate with people on Reddit or whatever. So I'm trying to figure out the techniques for this. One of my main hurdles is just getting it started, doing it, just beginning something like this, speaking session, whatever it is, especially kind of like live chat can be a little like once I'm started, I like it, but it's kind of like getting up to that point. I just kind of have to kick myself over the edge or whatever. So anyways, that's just some initial thoughts and stuff, and the reason why I would choose to reply to your response, your video response, with a video response. So I'm kind of just testing this out, and we got this live thing. I'm sure 0 people are watching right now. Live anyways. I do like that that note that you said about this. You would rather have 2 really good people listening than a billion mediocre, average, whatever. And I really get that. And of course, I just want to share that I get that we see and understand something special. We have seen the wild potential, the potentiality of life itself beyond the confines of normal shared consensus reality. Um, like we each have our own reality in some sense, our whole different narratives, our stories, our experiences, everything that we went through to everything we went through in life to learn about what is real. And it's like, what is a door? What is a light switch? What is a card? What is a phone? These things we think that there is a shared consensus on what it is. However, when you look back, when you look through the history of, or if you could scan someone's brain and see how do they know what that is, you're going to see completely unique experiences of that person had in their own context of their own life. It has nothing like yours whatsoever. Yet here we are talking about a door, a light switch, a pen, these things which we take for granted that this is when I say pen, everyone understands exactly what pen means. We take that for granted, and that's there's a big problem, a tripping up problem when you take reality for granted like that, and it's actually a model in our mind that's constantly developing, always changing. You never know what a pen is actually, what it actually is. I mean, could give an example like, you think you know what a pen is? Well, now see that? Now it's a hair clip or something stupid. Like, well, you never knew that a pen is that. It is a hair clip. It's a hair clip now. But like, it's just a funny little example of how your definition of pen has just been expanded. Whenever you look at a pen, the next time you see this on it, you're going to think, oh, you could use it to hold your hair. Is it a pen? Can pens do that? Is that part of what a pen is? So this is the kind of like stuff that I've been researching with my work on Portal Mountain. Zhenya and I getting into a lot of that. It's kind of like pulling up a lot of the reflections that the Buddhists have done, taking a lot of work from many different sources, and it turns out this is very important because when we have a solid idea of what reality is, and we think we know what reality is, it's actually a model in our head, and yet everything is always changing. Reality is always flowing. Our experience is flowing. Things are changing. And so when we have this this idea that reality is solid, that it is this set of relations, it is this and that thing, and this means that means that, and everyone has a consensus of what it is. When we think that that's true, our model in our brain is become encrusted. Happens especially when you're old. The older you get, speaking of boomers that you brought up, you want to mimetically inoculate boomers, or I guess using a lot of, like, this kind of reminds me of all that Q stuff. Like, it was like just for boomers, which is kind of funny. But there's a whole, like, generations have these kind of shared realities, and it's different among even generations. So when you have this concrete or this static model that's unchanging, and yet the universe of the reality is a flow of never stop changing, and everything is always through entropy, decay, all this kind of, and just new experiences and everything of what you've never experienced before, you can't cling to this solidity. It's not going to help you, and in fact, it's going to cause all the problems we have with identity politics, wars. Like, it leads to everything, basically. So this is at the heart of it, is that idea that you think reality is solid. So that's just kind of like, I guess I wanted to kind of get that out there as kind of one of the main points. Like, you can look at it and see, okay, we have protocols, methods, techniques for illuminating this in people. We call it in the past the linchpin protocol, because it's the critical thing to the system, is to take your APS and model itself. In a way, in other words, you model how you do models, and then what that does is explode them into all their bits. So when you look at something, say your breath, for example, you see it just, what is breath? Well, it in and of itself, you try to find that out. This is the meditation, and you find that it's simply an entry point to a fractal. It never ends. The lines, there is no solid delineation. So this is an example of a technology, or a cognitive technology that that's been around for a long time. I think I sent a message to you about that, but or maybe it was another person, but just about that these ideas have been around for a long time, since at least since the axial age, when it's been badly needed. You could say the world was going towards the rational out of the body and out of the context, and we discovered the transcendent. This is coinciding with the alphabet and the externalization of memory, and then where we would have things talk to us, like things they say, whatever it says to you. This is an object, this is an artifact that's speaking to you now, right? So the stone tablets, the stone began to talk, the trees began to talk back to us, and they reinforced this crust of the APS, of the realities, where it became reinforced by the external coming back into us. And this whole process, and basically this whole inversion, we used to have this more kind of inner capacity, this inner capacity to navigate reality, that's been inverted by basically what we would describe as cybernetics, whereas this outside environment, or you could say society, culture outside, has now made us a tool, a piece of its infrastructure. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. And I've always been on that topic of responsibility, of taking responsibility, of knowing about your inner mind, your inner workings, the phenomena of conscious experience. And it's important because then you can see how these things work and how they actually kind of control you. So, and this is kind of like touching on computational propaganda, where this consensus reality within you is being manipulated and triggered and button pushed by these symbols outside, which tell you to do things. And we have to take responsibility back for what's going on within our experience. And how do we do that? You have to look inward. And this is kind of like, I don't know if I want to get into all this right now, but suffice to say, we've been doing a lot of work, a lot of research. Stuff is it's off the hook. So getting back to, I just wanted to actually address some of the, like, what I thought about when you were talking about the dirt apocalypse, just everybody having dirt on each other in government and all that kind of stuff, and people just holding onto secrets, and this kind of like mutually assured destruction of secrets. If you tell this, I'll tell this. And it reminds me a lot, like, I wonder, like, where can you go with that? I know that that it's kind of like losing that veneer, that veneer of good looks of what government does, of what GovCorp does. That's kind of what you would expect to happen when you realize this, kind of like the Epstein stuff and all that. And of course, before I had my awakening experience, I was all into the the banks, the government, what are they up to? All this central power and all this kind of stuff. And I came to the conclusion you can't track it down. It's crypto power, and what's holding it together is basically spiritual in a sense. The problem is spiritual. So it's not that any one person holds onto power. They try, but it's like you're disposable at every level, everywhere. So it's actually the patterns that are going on within each individual, within each of us. This is why we can look inside and see the whole world of evil outside. Just in our kind of state of being, how we are, when we see and notice these reactions, these trigger-based reactions, when the outside world is pushing our buttons, pushing our levers, when we find that we cannot be calm inside when the storm is outside. So when we take note of this kind of stuff, we see that we are not free of outside conditions, of things happening to us which upset us and cause reaction. And again, this you can see here that that way in which we have become a tool of society, when actually society, of course, emerges from the individual. That's why we have the society that we see today, because of our collective emergence, of our collective individuality, and our skill at navigating reality, so to speak, at noticing the inner phenomena, tracking it, watching it. The typical thing, like if you have bad thoughts, like watch them, don't throw them under the rug or sweep them away. Try to track down and hunt that down, and figure out what it is that's causing you to be disturbed, and learn how to not. And then, so from a calm standpoint, we're able to deal with things in a more kind of rational manner, a calm, quiet, a slow manner, rather than just being triggered and poked and reacting, and everything completely out of our control. So before that, as I was saying, before that kind of awakening experience where I almost all at once just had this vision outside of time, just to put it very quickly, a vision of all possibility, all potentiality, of all universes, frozen solid in an unchanging, unmoving crystal. And so I was outside of that, and when I came back, I was changed. And so what I called this, the gauntlet of fear, that I was after, looking after one thing or another. Who is it? Who's doing this? And what I see, you're kind of interfacing there with some of these memes, like that. Yeah, we know, like, that shit's triggered, wired, ready to blow. Like, it could blow. In so many ways, this mutually kind of assured destruction, and that's not like a necessarily like Armageddon, but apocalypse or whatever. The revealing of truth, like how it's comical how the things that people do, the reasoning for doing everything, it can all be seen as absurd, which is interesting. The things that people just go on about in their life, and how do you communicate? How do you connect with people like that when you know that they are part of your society? They are emerging that society in which you are living in. So it becomes a kind of problem beyond yourself, and that there's all kinds of tricks in there. So my thinking a long time ago was like, okay, I've been through the gauntlet of fear. I know there's shit out there. And so what now? So that was that's what I've just been going after, as hard as I can, pursuing. What do I do about it? How do I connect with people? Like the it just reminds me of that Dick Cheney quote. Like that we'll always be 2 steps ahead, and the people will just be um, stuck analyzing something that's already old, whatever the quote was. But so that's all you can ever do by chasing down crypto power. It will never lead to anything because it's a spiritual problem. It's a problem of our collective resonance, our collective harmony, our collective emergence out into the social. We can see the social does not take care of the individual, it doesn't give a crap. That's because each individual has lost that responsibility, that communication. So there should be a communication. So we know, so society, social is emerging from individual practice, individual together. And then so the social bears back down on the individual. So what you have to do is push back to have that balance, so that you're not being, so that the things that you're participating in the social has that channel for your feedback to improve and change things that are happening here. That function has been reduced to a vote every 4 years for some clown, whatever. A choice between two, as if those are they sending us their best people? I don't think they're sending us their best people when we're voting for which one, red or blue, whatever. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'd go with that. But I do understand and respect and appreciate the kind of the raw power in a consensus reality of a whole generation, whatever, boomer, all this kind of stuff, to be able to interface, to know what the triggers are, and that can be very powerful. So these various triggers, they can be intercepted or intersected and reutilized in a way to point the person towards their inner being. So basically reframing political problems as what I've just described, like the individual needs to have some sort of responsibility. It has to be in the system. If we are completely unaware of the ongoings of what happens behind the scenes, and we are just naively believing that the politicians who made it that far don't have people with dirt on them big time, who can just end their life, their family, their career, whatever. If we're believing that, then it's kind of like, it's kind of a trick of our realities, our ideas of reality. It's so many ideas all coming together at once, and you can peel up the layers and see these little inner workings of how politicians and how people become controlled, and like where you would have like you can't get into government unless you've done something on camera with a minor or whatever. Like these kind of things, like you have to have dirt on you. This is how you get into the satanic whatever cult, so to speak. You have to do this type of an act. You have to hurt somebody on video. So like, to be able to flip into accepting that as a reality, as that people would actually do that to each other, you have to go from your whole reality, what you think it is, what you think is real, all these rainbows and unicorns and lollipops and sunshine. Peeling up the edge is painful. It's going to hurt, and when people see that, they're usually reacting away. They're like, no, something bad is here. And I like feeling good about myself. I like all the ideas that I have. I like, I'm going to keep working hard and retire one day and all this stuff, and then die without ever thinking about it. It's very uncomfortable. So, but there's this kind of thing, like there's kind of a flip potentially, at least. Like it takes a lot of these little pecks at your reality, and then it's like, okay, you've seen so many things that the cognitive dissonance that you've tried to hold in your brain, these opposing this reality, this worldview you have, and these opposing facts or whatever that you just encountered doesn't make sense, so you've shoved it under the rug. When those can no longer, when it's like overwhelming, you're like, your brain just forces you to switch. It's like, I don't think it's necessarily a conscious choice, but we try to resist that in order to just maintain, sustain order. That's kind of the point of crusting up of the APS of reality, just to that we like things that are the same always, that don't change. We like comfort and all that. So that's kind of interesting. But so yeah, anyways, flipping the reality, it kind of can take a long time. And then where does it leave you? So let's say you've had enough of these memes, they've got to you or whatever, and you're like, dang, the world isn't what I thought. But then what do? You go into depression and all this kind of stuff, and then it's like, well, you really have to deal with it because now you've opened the floodgates, and your brain, against your wishes, has put too many pieces of the puzzle together. And this is kind of like what I get, that maybe you're trying to cause these triggers or these moments, or like just illuminating this kind of stuff, and it goes deep, and there's a whole dark pit and an abyss with it. And the good news is, on the other side, it's better than ever. That as I was referring to, that calm in the storm, there's a real freedom there, to not being triggered and poked, and just to not being on the verge of having your reality destroyed because you're racking up all this dissonance and just waiting for it to snap. Is that the way to live? Do you think it's sustainable? Yeah. So it may be impossible to what's the word, to give a disclaimer, or can't remember what it is. I used that word not too long ago, but to be able to tell somebody what they're getting into, that's, with a lot of this stuff, it's impossible, and it's kind of like, it's up to the individual intuition. These things just stack up, and you start linking things, and it's like, you realize that it's actually important for your life, and then you may go into that. But again, these are not, like, these are rabbit holes that may lead to personal, just kind of like misery, destruction, depression, if you don't go all the way, quote unquote. And that's this looking inward, this kind of spiritual thing, like, find out, who are you, what is your place here. So the world's screwed up, are you actually part of that? And there may be healing that needs to be done so that you are more part of part of the solution, so to speak, with the ability to navigate reality by your own direction, not from an inner direction, as opposed to simply reacting and being triggered into actions, and just being parts of these groups, like, of these symbol sets and ideologies and words, telling you who you are, what brand you are. And then because you're this brand or that brand, that means you like this people or that people, or you take it to the streets, or you get offended, and just all kinds of mass action and triggering. This is really, it's a sad state. I call it the participant society, because in our work, we've identified kind of what we call the degrees of coherence, and this is like towards that possibility for the calm and the storm, as well as the dynamic navigation of reality. Moving towards that, we call it degrees of coherence. So guest, participant, member, master, grandmaster. So membership is that realization that I had 5 years ago, or that I know you've described some of your own experience in the past, Cory. That I know you're a member. In fact, the qualification for mastery is that ability to teach and to reach out. So that may be a skill that you're working on. It's a skill that I'm working on for sure, towards mastery. And yeah, so it's like, where does it lead? These rabbit holes, you don't want to just set them up and have people like just have either their faith in the world lost, and then where does that leave them? Like depression, madness, or even deeper rabbit hole may be like that meditation that I gave as an example, to do the feedback of the model and the concrete, the reality. So the model in your head, what is breath, and this kind of stuff, what you think breath is, and then like, well, there's actually an ongoing, ever changing what it is breath, and it's so many things. And not only that, but once you look at breath, then you're looking at lungs, and you're looking at muscles, and you're looking at oxygen and molecules and water vapor and bad breath and brushing your teeth and like these, it just goes. And what is all of this? Like you try saying what is breath, and the vision of what it is unfolds fractally outwards until you've hit everything. So every entry point, everything in your abstract phase space is simply an entry point, in which the whole cosmos is reflected. So it's not a linear hierarchical. The breath is in the lungs is in the body is in the room is in the house. That's what the rational mind wants, and the intuitive mind says something different when you look at it. So anyways, taking that thought of rabbit holes, so this meditation, and then what happens when you do that, you're exposed to pure potentiality. That meaning of all these points, these strike points, the meaning of it all shifts and is based in experience, and it's the model is ongoing, the process is ongoing. So you may have like there should be like a viewer discretion warning, like mimetic hazard, don't try that meditation without having people to reach out to who know something about about that. Anyways, I'm here. What is it? How does YouTube go? Is it at Paper Sheepdog? Anyways, YouTube/user Paper Sheepdog, Paper Sheepdog on Telegram, u/Paper Sheepdog on Reddit. Drop me a note if you try that out and shit goes crazy. And particularly, so like once you're exposed to that, you may point it at your own very identity, at who you are, who you think you are, and that's where the whole thing of your life, the foundations, the pillars holding up who you are and what you're doing, who you think you are and where you're going, your future plans, your life, all of this can come collapsing down. And that's the kind of the abyss that I referred to, and so this is a bit of a deeper type of rabbit hole, and we need a way to come out the other side. And so the other side of pure potentiality is what we call isomorphic potentiality. So it's a subset, you could say, of potentiality, which is in harmony with itself across the fractal, the holonic fractal. So like as I was saying, like two holons, I'll give an example of individual and society. So there needs to be harmony, an isomorphism, translations between me being a responsible person, keeping track and navigating and dynamically navigating my reality. There has to be an isomorphism of that in society, so that society is also tracking what I have to say about it, and that flows out and comes back down at me, right? So when things come down at me, I can feed back and say, okay, that's not great. Let's try to do it a different way. And so that's also like the Buddha nature stuff. This is the Grand Master. This is Christ. This is Jesus Christ, the Son, balancing between the Father and the Spirit, the Yin and the Yang. So that middle way and that way of coherence, that's kind of where the rabbit hole has to lead. So if you don't have these things set up, you may be just triggering people into the depths of hell, like into an abyss, without some kind of life raft there available. And that's the whole point of our, I guess you could say, our work with Portal Mountain, is to be able to, in a very structured way, to be able to navigate this kind of stuff as a community together. And this manifests in what we call the guild, in which, so I've been describing some of the core, but for example, like you would have like the taxi guild or whatever, like the woodworking guild. Like, what do people do? How do they share with each other? How can we get this feedback going within individuals? So get your fundamental guilds right with your own proximity guild, your local or your loopback proximity guild, to be able to interface with guilds in your environment, your surroundings, with other people, to be able to have this dynamic of feedback, of kind of respect of the individual, and therefore a deserved and earned respect of the society by the individual, because it's not just coming down at you, being forced and pressed, such as your education, to push you into this left brain linear rational thinking, in which so many people, everyone, most people in the world are technically could be on the edge of just breaking out of that. Like, you never know, it with trauma or extremes, any kind of extreme loss of life of someone close to you, or just seeing the raw reality. Like, we are all on the verge of being triggered out of that kind of stuff. So it's definitely an interesting field. I wrote down a couple things. Just going to see if I can finish it off here. I guess I'd just say I do appreciate when I see stuff that you're doing, Cory. I like it. It's been kind of like, I feel like we've kind of diverged a little bit, and I'd like to connect better. That goes with everyone else in my network, but I think, like, I'm a space cadet too, and it's about damn time that we figure out how to get these lines of communication up and sustained. So some kind of routine to build things. Like, let's just share our ideas, our projects, our realities, our worldviews. Let's share this stuff and reflect them from each other, rather than just sitting in our own little isolation, working on something that'll never be ready, and it'll never be ready for people, for each other. It'll never be ready. So, and meanwhile, we're working on the same thing, so they might as well be done all together. So yeah, like catching a break. Like, feel that I've been writing, I've been doing all kinds of stuff, and it's like, you know, I've been through so much, and now I'm just like, I'm glad I have a job and like I can just come home and have dinner, and um so I'm feeling more grounded lately, and I'm trying to see the absurd in daily life, and in the things that people are doing. Like, it's really, um you got to laugh at it. It deserves to be laughed at. Everything, even what I do, what everyone does. Really, if you look down at it, it is all absurd. Kind of a freedom in that. There's a joy in that. It's like, don't take yourself too seriously, all this kind of stuff. Um, and then when you let go, you kind of can come back to it more naturally. So yeah, so I want to get the production stream going. I want to be able to do this more often. Thank you for the prompt to create this video, and we're already at 45 minutes, which is longer than I expected, but that's cool. Just got some things out. I'm sure I'll probably transcribe it. I have an auto transcription service, and tag it, and maybe use some of this stuff. That's cool. I don't know. Whatever. If nothing, just you and a few people saw it, maybe I'll post it somewhere else. Because I don't know. So it's an interesting topic, like the gauntlet of fear, the dirt apocalypse, like the collapsing of realities, rabbit holes, which can turn people into the ditch, into the abyss, but it can also save their souls. Your soul can be saved like this, by being triggered, and you're having your mind show you patterns, and seeing things, and investigating. It can be the best thing that ever happened to you in your life, and you could say, when it happens to you, that you were dead before. That's a possibility. If you can't imagine it, I would suggest imagining it, even imagining your own death. If you're lucky enough to be alive for your final moments, what would they be like? Would you think back at all this as vanity? What did you do with your life? What did you do? Did you do what you wanted to do? Do you always tell yourself, oh, well, there will be a time? You idealize, I'll take a walk, or I'll look at nature, or I'll meditate, but we never do those things. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. The beat goes on, and that was cool. But I will not be doing a number at the end of my response. That was a really cool song, though. Very good, buddy. Very good. Yeah. So that's it. That's my reflection off of your reflection of my reflection of your reflection. So we can keep it going, or come up with something new. Anyways, thanks again, Corey. Have a good one. End the stream.